I didn't walk onto that site looking for a headline. I walked onto it because a thin complaint packet landed on my desk at 6:42 in the morning, and something about it felt too clean to be random. No dramatic story. No rage. Just a contract number for a municipal retrofit, 3 photos taken from far enough away that you could deny everything, and 1 sentence typed like the person's hands were shaking. They're charging for safety they're not providing. I've been an inspector long enough to know what that usually means. Not someone forgot a cone. It means someone found a way to turn safety into a revenue stream, paperwork as a product, protection as a fiction. My supervisor suggested a standard visit, marked vehicle, call ahead, walk the perimeter, issue a few citations, give them time to correct. That approach works when the problem is laziness. It doesn't work when the problem is a business model. The packet included one more detail that made my stomach tighten. They have lookouts. If you show up official, they'll scrub it clean. That line wasn't paranoia. That line was experience. So I used the only door they couldn't slam without exposing themselves: insurance. The project was under an owner-controlled insurance program. That meant the site had to accept periodic loss control walks from people who weren't wearing state logos. I arranged it through the proper channels, documented the purpose, and showed up like a consultant. Plain gear, neutral language, clipboard, no badge on display. My badge stayed zipped inside my bag. The warehouse looked like 1,000 other jobs: high steel, fresh decking, loud machines, workers moving with the rhythm of deadlines. But the first thing I noticed wasn't noise or dust. It was choreography. A brand new banner near the trailer read, "Safety First," in clean letters, like it had been unrolled 10 minutes earlier. A table held sealed, boxes of disposable masks, still wrapped, positioned where anyone walking by would see them. A whiteboard displayed a daily safety checklist, with perfect handwriting and perfect dates. Too perfect. So, the superintendent met me at the gate. His name was Trent, stitched across his vest in thick black thread. Early 40s, sun-baked skin, radio clipped high like a trophy, smile wide enough to sell asphalt. He shook my hand too hard. "You the safety guy?" he asked, like the word was a joke he could control. "Good. We're spotless. City loves us." Then, before I could even answer, he leaned closer, voice dropping into a friendly confidence. "You'll see. We run a tight ship. None of that drama. We keep it moving." On a job site, "keep it moving" is often code for "don't ask questions." I kept my face calm. I matched his tone. People tell you more when they think you're on their side. "Just here to understand your controls," I said. "Traffic patterns, lift zones, fall protection, usual stuff." He waved me in like he owned the air. "Walk anywhere. We're clean." The mezzanine was where the complaint photos had been taken. 2 stories up, open edges, steel framing, workers staging decking panels. And right away I saw the problem that can't be argued away. No continuous guardrails. No lifeline. Harnesses hung on a rail like decorations, unused. One misstep and a person could disappear over that edge before anyone even finished shouting. Trent watched me watch it. He waited for the consultant lecture. I didn't give him one. Instead, I asked a question that sounds casual, but forces a real answer. "Who's your competent person for fall protection today?" He didn't hesitate. "Me. Always me." "And your daily inspection log?" He pointed toward the trailer without looking. "Logged. Every morning." I nodded like that meant something and kept moving. Down below, a scissor lift crept near overhead lines with no spotter. A forklift carried a load with a strap that looked tired. Inside a partially enclosed area, someone cut concrete dry, dust blooming in a sunbeam like smoke. The hazards were bad. The confidence was worse. In the trailer, Trent proudly set a binder on the desk like a heavy object could substitute for truth. "Here you go. Training, inspections, toolbox toss. Everything you need." The pages were pristine. Every signature looked similar. The handwriting style repeated across different employees. Dates aligned too neatly. It felt like a binder built for an audience. not a workforce. I flipped to the training section and paused on a vendor name I recognized. Legitimate, expensive. The kind of company that doesn't accidentally forget they trained an entire crew. Who led this session? I asked. Trent shrugged, almost amused. The trainer. They come out, do their thing. What day? Last month. He said it without blinking. I scanned the sign-in sheet. The date was yesterday. The trainer's signature had the same slant as Trent's notes in the margin. I didn't accuse him, not yet. Accusations turn people cautious. I wanted him comfortable. So I asked to see cost allocation records under the insurance walk pretext. Rentals, equipment, third-party training invoices, the safety line items billed to the city. Trent laughed like I'd requested the recipe for a secret sauce. Oh, accounting has all that, he said. But trust me, we spend a fortune on safety. City pays. We comply. He winked when he said comply, as if compliance was a performance you could bill by the hour. He stepped out to take a call. The moment he was gone, I took my own notes faster. The time, the binder page numbers, the vendor names, the serial number on the scissor lift, the location of the open edge, the fact that harnesses existed but weren't in use. I photographed the sign-in sheet, the fall plan, the inspection log, quietly, clinically, like collecting evidence at a scene before someone wipes it down. When Trent returned, he acted even warmer, as if friendliness could erase the edges I'd seen. You'll write up something nice for the file, he said, so the city stops breathing down our necks. I looked at him and realized something simple and heavy. He thought I was here to help the story. He didn't know I was here to verify reality. I zipped my bag, left the trailer, and watched a young worker step near the open edge with nothing between him and 2 stories of air. That night, in my truck, I didn't drive away right away. I sat with the complaint packet on my passenger seat and my photos on my phone, and I felt the moment the case shifted from routine to, it's already gone too far. Because if they were willing to fake this much paper in plain sight, the missing part wasn't a form. It was a conscience, and the next time someone slipped, the city would call it an accident. I wouldn't. The next morning, I arrived earlier than I needed to. Not because I wanted to catch them doing something dramatic, but because I wanted to see what the place looked like before the performance started. At that hour, the parking lot was half empty. The trailer lights were still off, and the safety first banner hung crooked, like someone had tossed it up in the dark and never bothered to straighten it. That told me everything I needed to know. Safety wasn't a habit here. It was a prop they set when an audience arrived. I walked in the same way as the day before. Plain gear, neutral posture, no badge visible. The gate guy nodded like he'd already been told I was harmless. Inside, the crew gathered for the morning huddle near the trailer. Trent stood facing them, radio clipped high on his vest, coffee in one hand, the other hand chopping the air like he was cutting minutes off the schedule. He didn't speak about hazards. He spoke about speed. We're behind, he said. City's got their eyes on us. I need hustle today. No wandering, no stopping. A couple of guys laughed, not because it was funny, because laughter is how you show you're on the right side of the boss. Then Trent added the line that made my jaw tighten, and I don't need anyone slowing us down with safety theater. He said theater like it was an insult aimed at anyone who cared about living through the week. A younger worker raised his hand. Skinny, tense shoulders, hard hat too clean like it was new. His vest read, Mason. Are we getting rails on the mezzanine edge? Mason asked. His voice wasn't defiant. It was cautious, like he'd rehearsed it in his head and still regretted speaking. Trent didn't explode. He didn't need to. He smiled, the kind of smile that makes a room go quiet. Rails are coming, Trent said, dragging the words out like he was doing Mason a favor. Don't worry about it. Just watch your step. That wasn't an answer. That was a dismissal, wrapped in reassurance. The huddle broke. Mason lingered a second. A foreman drifted toward him, leaned in, and said something low. I didn't hear the words, but I saw the effect. Mason's shoulders dropped. His eyes flicked down, and he nodded like a person agreeing to disappear. He walked toward the mezzanine, the open edge, the place where a person becomes a statistic. I followed at a distance and waited for a moment when no one was watching him too closely. On job sites, workers don't hide from hazards. They hide from management. I came up beside him while he staged decking panels. "First big job?" I asked lightly. He nodded. "Yeah." "Mason?" He glanced at my vest. I'd made sure my name patch looked generic. "Yeah." "You feel okay up here?" I asked. Quiet, like it was just conversation. His eyes flicked to the edge, then to the harnesses hanging behind the crew. Unused. He swallowed. "They said it's fine. They said rails are coming." "And if someone says it's not fine?" I asked. Mason exhaled slowly through his nose. "They send you to clean up, or they stop calling you. My cousin got cut from hours on another site for attitude." There it was, the mechanism, not safety, not training. Fear. I didn't press him for a confession. I didn't ask him to risk himself with names and accusations. That's not how you protect someone who's already trapped. I just nodded and said, "Watch your spacing. Don't work the edge alone." He gave me a quick look like he was trying to decide whether I was naive or real. Then he went back to work. In the trailer later, Trent offered me the binder again like it was a shield. "See? All good," he said, flipping pages. "We do it by the book." I pointed at the fall protection plan. "Walk me through your anchor points," I said. Trent's eyes narrowed for half a second, then he recovered. "They're installed along the beamline," he said, tapping the paper. Certified. I'd already walked that beamline. I'd seen bare steel. No rated anchors, no lifeline system. Nothing you could legally call a tie-off point. So I asked the simplest question on earth. "Show me." His smile didn't move, but his jaw tightened. "We're busy," he said. "You can see it's safe." I held my voice steady. "If it's installed, it takes 30 seconds to point at it." The air in the trailer shifted. The friendly act drained out of him, and what replaced it was irritation. Like I'd broken the rules of a game I wasn't supposed to know we were playing. He stood up. "Fine." We walked out together. He took me to a section of the mezzanine where 2 short guardrail panels had appeared overnight, exactly where the trailer window had a clear view. There were still long stretches of open edge on both sides. Still no lifeline. Still nothing preventing a fall except luck. Trent spread his hands like a magician revealing a trick. "There, rails." I stared at the panels, then at the open edge continuing past them. "That's not coverage," I said calmly. "That's staging." His face flushed. "You people," he snapped. Then caught himself because he remembered I was still insurance. "You consultants, you want the site to look like a hospital." "I want your people to go home," I replied. Trent stepped closer, voice lower, sharp enough to cut. "Listen," he said, "we're under a city schedule. If we slow down for every what if, nobody gets paid. You want that on your conscience?" That was the moment I stopped seeing him as just sloppy. That was a strategy. Frame safety as weakness. Frame compliance as the enemy. Turn survival into a moral argument. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue in circles. I asked for the training documentation again, specifically the third-party session they build. Names, dates, trainer credential numbers, and the purchase order for it. Trent laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "You really think the city cares who taught a toolbox talk?" he said. "They want a binder. They get a binder." He said it like he was proud of how the system worked. And then he bragged, because arrogant people can't help themselves. "We bill safety the way we bill equipment," he added. "It's part of the job. Costs money. City pays. Everyone's happy." Everyone's happy. Except the guy standing 2 stories up with no rail. I kept my face blank and nodded once like I accepted it. Because the fastest way to stop a liar is to let him talk until he hands you the rope. But that decision didn't feel clean. When I left the site that day, I sat in my truck and replayed Mason's shoulders, dropping after the foreman whispered to him. I replayed Trent's words. Safety theater? Watch your step? Everyone's happy. I looked at my notes, my photos, the mismatched dates, the identical handwriting. And for the first time on this case, I felt something sharper than concern. I felt anger, not explosive anger, the kind that stays cold and focused, the kind that makes you stop hoping people will do the right thing and start preparing to make them. I didn't know it yet, but the next 24 hours would force my hand, because someone on that mezzanine was going to slip, and they were going to laugh about it like it was nothing. And if that happened while I kept gathering, then I wasn't an inspector anymore. I was part of their theater. That night, I filed the internal escalation request. Not a warning letter, an imminent hazard review. And I attached a single line at the top of my report, because it was the truth, and it was the only thing that mattered. They are billing safety while actively preventing it. By the third day, the site had learned my pattern. They didn't fix the danger, they dressed it. When I pulled in that morning, the banner was straight. The mass box had been opened and spread out like a buffet. 2 workers stood near the mezzanine with harnesses actually on, not clipped to anything but worn, so from a distance it looked compliant. Trent met me with a grin that tried too hard. "See?" he said, sweeping his arm like a tour guide. "We took your feedback. Better already." He wanted credit for the costume change. I kept my tone even. "Where's the continuous rail?" Trent's smile didn't move, but his eyes tightened. "We're getting there." "Where's the certified tie-off system?" He shrugged. "We've got harnesses." Harnesses without an anchor are just straps. He walked me toward the mezzanine and pointed again at those 2 short guardrail sections placed right in the clean line of sight from the trailer window. I could practically see the thought process behind it. Give the observer something to photograph that suggests improvement, but the open edge continued beyond those panels, long stretches of nothing. Below us, a scissor lift rolled under overhead lines without a dedicated spotter. Inside, the concrete cutting started again and dust floated through sunlight like fog. It wasn't an accident. It was a habit. I moved slowly, taking notes without making a show of it. Times, locations, who was supervising what, the kind of details that hold up later when someone says, "That never happened." Trent walked beside me, talking too much, because a man who talks too much is trying to control what you see. "We're good here," he said. "We've done this 1,000 times. The city loves us. You know how these jobs are. Everybody wants paperwork. Nobody wants delays." Then he said it again, almost casually, like he believed repeating it made it true. "Everyone's happy." I glanced across the mezzanine and saw Mason working near the open edge again, still young, still careful, still pretending he wasn't scared. The crew was staging decking panels, heavy pieces that shift when they're lifted wrong. 2 men pushed one into place. The panel snagged, twisted, and for a second the edge lifted like a trapdoor. Mason stepped back to avoid the swing. His heel hit a loose scrap. His arms windmilled. His body tilted toward the open edge. There was no rail to catch him, no lifeline to stop him, no anchor to clip into. Just air. He caught a steel column at the last instant, fingers grabbing it like a reflex from somewhere deeper than thought. His hard hat rattled. His face went pale in a way you can't fake. The crew went silent for half a heartbeat. Then laughter burst out. Not relief, mocking laughter like his fear was entertainment. Trent's voice rose from the stairs. "Watch your feet!" He stormed up, not rushing to check Mason, not calling a stop, not ordering the area cleared. He was angry that the moment existed at all. "You trying to get us shut down?" Trent snapped. Mason stared at him, blinking like he'd just come back from the edge of something permanent. I stepped in before Mason could speak, because young workers learn fast that honesty gets punished. "That was a near miss," I said. "You stop work on this edge until you install continuous rails and a functioning tie-off system. That's not optional." Trent turned on me with a look full of accusation, like I'd insulted him personally. "We already fixed it," he said, pointing to the stage rails like they were a spell. "You saw it. You saw the rails." "That's decoration," I replied. calm, controlled. "This edge is still open." Trent lowered his voice and moved closer, careful to keep his crew listening, just enough to know he was handling me. "You don't understand," he said. "This is a city job. We can't stop because somebody tripped. Guys mess up. That's why we tell them to be careful." His words landed hard because I'd heard them before. Different sites, same logic. If a worker gets hurt, it becomes the worker's fault for being human. I looked at Mason and saw something even worse than fear. Resignation, like he'd accepted that the price of employment was silence. That's when the break happened in me. Not a dramatic breaking point. A clean internal snap, like a rope going taut and then severing. I realized I had been treating this like a compliance problem. It wasn't. It was a control problem, one they solved with intimidation and paperwork. And that meant normal recommendations were useless. I took out my notebook and wrote down what mattered. Mason's position, the task, the missing guardrail, Trent's response, the reaction of the crew. I logged the time and the conditions. I didn't need drama. I needed a timeline. Trent watched me write and scoffed. "You gonna make a big report out of a stumble?" I met his eyes. "I'm gonna document what I saw." He smirked like he still thought I was a harmless visitor. "Write whatever you want. The city wants a binder. They'll get a binder." Then he did something he probably thought was smart. He tried to control the narrative. He ordered the crew to clip harnesses on, still with no anchors, right where he knew I'd be looking. He told a foreman to stand by the lift as a spotter for a few minutes. He even had someone spray water near the cutting area, just enough to make the dust settle while I walked past. For a short window, the job looked safer. And that's when I realized the second truth. They could do the right thing anytime they wanted. They just didn't want to unless someone important was watching. I left the mezzanine and went back to the trailer, asked for the incident log again, and watched Trent hand me a blank sheet, like he was proud of it. "No incidents," he said. "Nothing to report." Mason's hands were still shaking. I didn't argue. I didn't lecture. I made calls. In my truck, with the door closed and the site noise muted, I called my supervisor and used the words supervisors take seriously. "Imminent hazard," I said. Repeated, uncorrected. "Near miss observed. Evidence of staged compliance. Potential billing fraud tied to safety line items." There was a pause on the other end, because those words change how an agency moves. My supervisor asked, "Are you sure?" I looked at my notes, my photos, the identical signatures, the copied fall plan referencing anchors that didn't exist, the staged rails, the near miss, the blank incident log. "I'm sure," I said. "If we wait, someone falls. And if we don't act, we're complicit." He told me to send everything through the secure channel. I did. Photos, timestamps, observations, and the cost items they claimed under safety. I flagged the training vendor line and asked for verification with payroll correlation. I requested a coordinated enforcement response, including the fire marshal, because dust control and hot work rules were being ignored. I also requested a financial investigator to look at the safety billings against actual rentals and installations. It wasn't revenge, it was process, what the system is supposed to do when a site treats human beings like disposable parts. When I got back out of the truck, Trent was waiting, arms crossed, smile back in place like nothing had happened. "You good?" he asked, almost friendly. "We're all set, right?" I looked at him for a long second. This man had watched a young worker almost fall 2 stories and responded with anger, not concern. And I realized something else, something colder. Trent didn't think he was doing wrong. He thought he was doing business. My micro-catharsis came in a quiet form. Mason walked past us and for the first time, didn't look away. His eyes met mine for half a second and there was a question there. "Are you actually going to do something?" I nodded once, not for Trent, for Mason, for everyone who'd been trained to laugh at the edge so they wouldn't have to acknowledge how close it was. And then silence, the kind that means something's already in motion, Because after that day, there was no more insurance walk, no more friendly questions, no more pretending a binder could replace a rail. The next time I came through that gate, I wouldn't be alone. The next morning, the weather turned, the sky low and gray, the kind of morning that makes steel feel colder than it should. I parked 2 streets away and walked the last stretch on purpose. Not because I needed drama, but because I needed to see what the site did before they saw me. From the corner, I watched the gate for a full minute, and I saw it. A kid posted near the entrance with a radio pretending to scroll his phone. He wasn't security. He was a lookout. When a truck slowed, he glanced up, thumb hovering over the push-to-talk button. The complaint packet hadn't been exaggerating. I took my own phone out, opened my notes, and wrote 1 line. Lookout confirmed. Then I kept walking. When I rounded the corner and the site finally noticed me, I wasn't alone. A black state vehicle rolled in behind me, then another. A local fire marshal truck followed. Then an unmarked car with government plates that made even the cockiest superintendent hesitate. No convoy sirens, no shouting, just presence. People love to pretend rules are optional until they see how many people can enforce them. Trent came out of the trailer fast, radio squawking, face already tight with anger like he'd been waiting for a reason to explode. "What the hell is this?" he barked. He looked past me, counting vehicles, counting badges, recalculating how much control he still had. I reached into my bag and pulled out my state badge. Not like a movie. Not dramatic. Just the truth. "I'm with the State Occupational Safety Division," I said. "This is an enforcement action." For 1 second his mouth opened without sound, like his brain needed time to accept it. Then his face hardened. "You told me you were insurance." "I told you I was here for a loss control walk," I replied. "You invited me. You escorted me. You provided documentation." I kept my voice level because the moment you match their anger, you give them a stage. Trent tried to recover, turning his body slightly so his crew could see him. In charge. "This is overkill," he said loudly. "We can correct whatever you think you saw." "I'm not here for promises," I said. "I'm here for conditions." The team split immediately, like water finding cracks. One inspector went straight to the mezzanine edge. Another moved toward the lift operations. The fire marshal headed inside to the cutting area, where the concrete saw was already whining. The financial investigator, quiet, polite, deadly, asked to see the billing binder and the city pay applications. Trent followed me, trying to control the route. "Start with the trailer," he insisted. "We have all our paperwork ready." That's when I felt it again, the instinct to perform for authority instead of protect workers. I didn't let him lead. "We'll start where the hazards are," I said, and I walked toward the mezzanine. As we climbed, a foreman hissed to a worker to clip in. The worker grabbed his harness lanyard and looked around like a man searching for a hook that didn't exist. My colleague paused at the edge and didn't need to say much. "No continuous guardrail," she said. "No lifeline, no certified anchor points visible." She turned to Trent. "Where are the anchors listed in your fall plan?" Trent pointed at the stage guardrail panels. "Right there. We put rails up." The inspector didn't even look at them for long. "That's not continuous coverage," she said. "That's partial staging. This edge is open." Trent's jaw tightened. "We're working on it." "Stop," my colleague said, sharp enough to cut. "You stop work here. Now." Trent stepped toward her, voice rising. "You can't shut down a city job over rails that are coming. You people—" "Stop work order," she repeated, and her pen hit paper. That word changed everything. The crew froze. Tools slowed. A forklift idled and then backed away like it suddenly remembered gravity. Trent swung to me, eyes wide with anger and betrayal. "This is because of you," he spat. "You set this up." I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply said, "It's because of the edge." Below us, the fire marshal's voice echoed from inside the warehouse. "Shut it down," he called. And then again louder, "Shut it down now." A monitor in his hand showed particulate levels. He didn't need to yell about numbers. He just needed to show them. Dust control wasn't a suggestion. It was required. Within minutes, the site shifted from noisy productivity to tense chaos. Workers started stepping back from hazard zones. A foreman tried to move equipment away from inspectors. Someone ran toward the trailer with a binder, like it was a fire extinguisher. Trent grabbed my arm hard enough to make a point. "You don't get it," he hissed. "We've got deadlines. We've got payroll. You're going to ruin people." I pulled my arm free, not aggressively, but decisively. "You ruined people the moment you made safety optional," I said. His face flushed. "We do safety. We paid for it. We've got training. We've got receipts." That was the moment the financial investigator finally spoke up. Still polite, still calm. "About the receipts," she said. She opened a folder and slid out copies of the city pay applications. Line items flagged for review. Safety rentals, certified anchor installation, third-party fall training, dust control equipment. She tapped the totals with one finger. $250,000 billed under safety and safety-related controls, she said. "We're now verifying whether those controls exist on this site." Trent blinked fast. "That's accounting. That's admin. I don't—" The investigator didn't raise her voice. "You signed the field verification," she said. "Your name is on the form stating the controls were in place." Trent tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. "Look, this is how it works," he said too loud. "The city wants paperwork. We give them paperwork. Everyone does it." And in that moment, he didn't just confess. He normalized it. He admitted it was cultural. The investigator nodded once like she'd just been handed what she needed. "Thank you," she said quietly, and wrote something down. My micro-catharsis hit like a clean internal snap. Not because I enjoyed watching him panic, because the system had finally shifted from his stage to reality. Trent pivoted into a new tactic: intimidation. He started barking at foremen to pull the guys back and clean up that area and get those rails up now. He tried to make frantic movement look like compliance. But stop work doesn't care how hard you hustle. Stop work means you stop. An inspector posted the order at the trailer. Red tags went on equipment. The mezzanine edge was taped off. The lift operations were halted until proper spotter procedures and clearance were demonstrated. The cutting area was shut until dust control measures were installed. The site couldn't pretend anymore. Trent marched toward the trailer as if he could still win with paperwork. And that's when I saw the lookout kid at the gate. Radio pressed to his mouth, eyes wide, trying to call in some kind of warning that was too late to matter. Because the warning had already arrived. The convoy was already inside. Trent stormed back out with the binder and slapped it on the table, flipping pages like he could overwhelm everyone with ink. "Here," he said. "Training, inspections, sign-offs, everything." My colleague compared the fall plan to the actual steel layout. "These anchors are described as installed along Beamline C," she said. "Beamline C has no anchors, not even holes for anchors. This plan doesn't match the site." The fire marshal looked at the dust control checklist. "It says water suppression is used," he said. "It isn't. The saw is running dry." The financial investigator held up the third-party training invoice. "This vendor confirmed no training occurred on this project during the period billed," she said. Trent's face drained of color, and he turned his anger outward because it had nowhere else to go. "This is sabotage," he yelled. "You're trying to make us look bad?" No one responded, because when evidence stacks up, yelling becomes meaningless noise. And then the city liaison arrived, same woman from earlier, polite eyes, tablet in hand. Only this time her face wasn't smiling. She read the stop work notice. She saw the red tags. She watched the crew stand idle. Her fingers tightened on the tablet. Trent rushed toward her, voice suddenly soft, pleading. "We're handling it," he said. "We're correcting it right now. Don't worry." The liaison looked at him and said the sentence that broke what was left of his performance. "You billed us for safety you didn't provide," she said. "Do you understand how serious that is?" Trent opened his mouth, but no story came out that could survive the paper in front of her. Because this wasn't just safety anymore. This was fraud tied to a public contract. And fraud doesn't end with a warning. It ends with consequences. They thought I was the insurance guy. They thought I was someone they could charm or intimidate or bury under a binder. But that morning, standing beside the posted stop work order, I realized something calm and final. The shutdown wasn't a threat. It was already happening. The site stayed quiet for days after the shutdown. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, more like the silence you get when everyone realizes the rules were real the whole time, and they've been gambling with other people's lives. The official notices went up fast. Stop work, corrective action requirements, a formal hazard abatement list with deadlines. The city issued a suspension letter on the contract pending investigation. The state opened an enforcement file. The fire marshal wrote their own citations, and the financial investigator did what financial investigators do. She stopped caring about Trent's personality and started caring about signatures, purchase orders, and who benefited. Trent tried to survive with the only tools he had left. First, he tried charm. He called my office 3 times in one day, leaving messages that sounded friendly but desperate. "We're working on it. We're installing rails. We can make this right." Then he tried anger. He showed up at the field office doorway one afternoon and demanded to talk man to man, like masculinity could rewrite a timeline. When that didn't work, he tried the last move. People like him always try. Isolate the blame. He told the city liaison it was a paperwork mix-up. He told the crew it was the consultant's fault. He told his project manager he'd been misled by subs. And he told anyone who would listen that I'd set him up. But evidence doesn't care about storytelling. The invoices were tied to the city pay applications. The pay applications required field verification. The verification had signatures. The signatures had names. And those names weren't only Trent. That was the part companies hate most. Fraud rarely lives alone. Within a week, the prime contractor terminated Trent for cause. They did it quickly, loudly, the way organizations sacrifice one person to protect the body. They sent a message to the crew about our commitment to safety. They blamed a bad actor. They promised the city full cooperation. They thought that would end it. It didn't, because the money trail didn't stop at Trent. The financial investigator confirmed the training vendor never set foot on that project during the build period. Rental companies had no records of guardrail systems delivered. There was no purchase order for anchor installations, no certified installer reports, no inspection tags. The fall protection plan itself didn't match the site layout, meaning it was copied, likely reused across jobs as a template, a checkbox to unlock payment. And the number everyone kept circling was the same one that made the city's legal department go cold. $250,000. Not a rounding error, not a misunderstanding. A deliberate amount large enough to be worth the risk. The city demanded repayment. The contractor tried to negotiate. The city refused to pretend it was a mistake, because public money comes with public consequences. Penalties followed. Eligibility for future municipal bids was suspended pending review. Internal emails were pulled under discovery, and suddenly the people who'd smiled through "everyone's happy" stopped smiling. The crew, the actual workers, were the only ones who didn't have lawyers. So we did what we could to make sure they weren't the ones punished for speaking up. The city required a transition plan to keep subcontractors paid for work already completed. A new contractor was brought in under a corrective agreement, and the contract schedule was reset with safety controls written into the deliverables, not treated as optional add-ons. The mezzanine got real protection this time. Continuous guardrails along the entire edge, certified anchor points installed by a documented installer. A horizontal lifeline system where it was appropriate. Daily inspections that were actually performed by a competent person whose name matched payroll. Dust suppression equipment that stayed on even when nobody important was watching. Lift operations with a designated spotter. the boring things that keep people alive. 3 months later, I returned for a follow-up. The banner was gone. No staged mask boxes. No theatrical checklists. Just a crew doing the job the way it should have been done from day one. Mason was still there. Same kid. A little more solid now, like surviving the edge had given him a backbone he didn't know he had. He didn't work for the Prime anymore. He'd transferred to a subcontractor on the new team. Same trade, better supervision. He recognized me immediately, and I saw his eyes flick to the edge out of habit. This time there was steel rail where air used to be. He approached me when nobody else was close and handed me a folded piece of paper like it mattered. It was a short note. Not dramatic, not emotional on the surface. "Thank you," it said. "I didn't think anyone would care." I stood there longer than I expected, holding that paper. Because this is the part people don't understand about enforcement. It isn't about feeling powerful. It's about the moment you realize someone has been trained to believe their life is worth less than the schedule. And you prove to them that's not true, using process, documents, and consequences that can't be laughed away. That was my final micro-catharsis. Not Trent getting fired. Not the contractor paying penalties. Mason seeing the rail and realizing the world could change when someone refuses to participate in the theater. On the drive back, I thought about Trent's favorite line. "Everyone's happy." He'd said it like it was proof, but happy isn't the measure of a safe site. A safe site is quiet in the right way, quiet because nothing went wrong, not quiet because everyone learned to stay silent. If there's a lesson here, it's simple enough to fit in one breath, and I didn't learn it from a textbook. I learned it from watching a young worker almost disappear over an open edge while grown men laughed. Paper can be staged, binders can be forged, smiles can lie. Steel doesn't. And when a company bills safety as if it's optional theater, you don't fix it with a warning. You fix it by forcing reality back into the room until the only thing left standing is what can survive evidence. That's what shut them down. Not my anger, not my voice. Documentation, conditions, and consequences. And the best part, the part that let me finally sleep, was knowing the ending wasn't just punishment. It was a reset. A job can restart. A life can't.